Hey everyone, it's Will from Garage Built Athlete, and thanks for joining us for episode 6 of the Garage Built Athlete podcast. In this episode, Matt and I talk through some of the more significant injuries that we've had, the recovery following those, our mindset and approach to training as a result of having those injuries, what we've learned from our experiences, and feel that might be useful to share with you. If you do find this podcast helpful, let us know. Drop a comment below. If you're dealing with a significant injury or even a little niggle, it'll be really useful to hear what you do to train around it and improve it, strengthen it, and get back to what you love doing. If you are squeamish, then there are some sections of this podcast that go into a bit of detail on the injury that we're talking about. So you've had your warning, you're still going ahead. Thanks for being brave. If you're new here, please do subscribe. And if you think that this episode is going to be helpful for one of your friends or 10,000 of your friends, I'm not fussy, share it with them. Let them know about it. It really helps the channel grow. Any references that we talk about will be linked in the description below. So go ahead and check those out if you're interested. Now you've had your warning, you're ready to go. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 6.
We had a little respite last week.
I needed a nap.
Yeah.
Big one.
We didn't commit to doing them every week. We just committed to 10. So this is 6 of 10. Last week, we had a little experiment in terms of can we talk as fast as possible and get it done in 40 minutes. Did not have the best reception in terms of
We
views.
actually got bad feedback in terms of views. Yeah, but the content was also a little bit different, wasn't it? Random discussion of what supplements are we taking.
Yeah. No more random than any other topic, I don't think. But
Yeah, but probably people are more interested about how you can be weapons grade at 40 than what should I take that's this weird medicine that we don't know that really works, but sometimes maybe does and sometimes maybe doesn't.
if we can get some confirmation of that, because
Yeah, it'd be great.
probably is no good to anybody. So tell us what you want, people, and tell your friends and ask them and all your other old fogey friends who are still trying to stay fit or not. So yes, speaking of topics, for today's topic, we were asked to give our view on training with or around injuries, which we have lots of experience in. You more than me. I've got one. I've got one fairly significant injury and a lot of niggles.
Oh, one currently existing injury or one that you've sustained over the course of your life? Because that doesn't sound like very many.
No, one proper thing that I've actually took me out of action properly. Other stuff's just like been a bit of a pain, and I'll talk around it. But I can tell you all about it because I looked back because what I wanted to know about my injury was how long did it take to get back up and running? Because I think people are that'd probably be interesting to know. Like if you have a type of injury, like how long, what have you got to put in to get back to kind of 100% or there or thereabouts? But when can you start training? When should you start training? Maybe how long that takes to, get back on your feet and all those kind of
I
things.
think you've wrenched open a rabbit hole there
Cool.
because there's a bunch of different answers to that question, I think. The first thing I looked at was what's the definition of injury?
hmm
Definition of injury, according to Oxford Dictionary, is damage caused by an external force applied to the body, intentional or unintentional.
Okay.
So something does something to your body and it causes some damage. The bit that's missing there for me is resulting in pain, because that's basically the signal that you've hurt yourself, isn't it? Is pain. What's interesting about that is that also in the research that I did, the level of tissue damage is disconnected from pain because pain is a brain event.
Oh, what does that
So that
mean?
happens upstairs. Well, people have different tolerance to pain, and this is going to go all over the map now, but I'll try and keep it relatively straight down the line because I'm not a doctor, so this is not financial advice. There are different sensitivities of people to pain, so this is one thing. And you have, as a human, you have a homunculus, which is a pain
Thank you very much.
scaled which is a pain scaled sensitivity map in your brain. And that is scaled relative to how sensitive you are on the different parts of your body. So the fingertips are gigantic because they're super sensitive,
Hmm.
and your back in the scale of this homunculus map is small because your
Yeah.
back isn't very sensitive. Yeah. So you have very sensitive fingers, sensitive skin around your face and so on, because you can feel really small movements or temperature changes and so on.
Yeah.
But your back is not very sensitive.
So
So
if you
go
mapped
on.
out a human body using the homunculus scale, it would have a tiny little
Mm.
back and massive fingers attached to the back with big old lips and nose and
You have big paws.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, cool. And I just wonder at what point in that scale does it change for mums to be able to withstand taking baking trays out of ovens with no oven gloves and getting into scalding hot baths because they're famous for
Is
that,
that
aren't
is that mum's or just our mum?
they? Maybe just our mum.
The scalding hot bath might just be our mum. The baking trays, you might even have to be a grandma to have
Yeah.
that superpower. They have
Yeah.
extra large mega mitten hands.
Yeah.
So there's a map, like a pain map on the body. And there is basically like a symptom threshold, and there's a tissue adaptability curve. Now, bear in mind that I didn't do any exercise science at school, so this is just me looking into how do you actually end up getting injured. So you have a pain line, like a set pain line, and then you have a tissue. So that can be any of your tissues, arm, leg, whatever it is. And as you use it, it should become adaptable and become stronger and more resistance to load. Yeah. So you're going to
Hmm.
apply this external force. And if you apply an external force at an appropriate amount, it causes a stimulus slash stress, and your body gets stronger. So it should move it away for a given stress, away from this symptom threshold.
Hmm.
If you keep hammering on the tissue, the adaptability level goes down and it goes closer and closer to this symptom threshold. So this pain level where your body is going to sense that it's getting close to getting injured,
Yeah.
and then it's going to trigger pain. And the
Okay.
trigger of pain is to prevent, there's a bunch of different things, but like the main one that was important for us, I think, is that it prevents structural damage.
Okay.
So you might not necessarily be injured, but you might be getting close, or your body is thinking you're getting close to getting
Hmm.
injured. So this is
Hmm.
this topic of it's a brain event. And what can affect whether you feel the pain or not is also connected to a bunch of different things. And this is also why different people have different pain thresholds. Because if you're stressed, this symptom line, so your tissue line is coming down. If you're stressed, your symptom line goes up. So for the same level of stress on the tissue, the pain level can be higher if you're stressed, or if you haven't slept, or if you're tired, I suppose, fatigued, and so on. So you can move this symptom threshold up and down.
Okay.
And basically, the injury occurs when the tissue adaptability line goes down through this pain symptom threshold, and your body has told you you're going to get hurt. Maybe it's told you too early, so you've got a bit of room to keep pushing, and people can push through pain when they're training.
Hmm.
And then at some point, there's a balance, isn't there, between pushing through and getting stronger, or continually pushing through. And then your tissue adaptability goes down and down and down. You continue to push through, and then at some point, you just get hurt.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of things that all come together to make that work. The other cool thing about the homunculus is, guess what it's called in a dog?
Please tell me dogmunculus.
It's called dogunculus. And in a rat,
Ratunculus.
ratunculus. Yes,
Oh,
please.
amazing.
So
Amazing.
honestly, this was my highlight of the week. I got quite into this research,
What about a
and I was
monkey?
like, "Well, yeah, be a monkunculus, I guess."
Oh, you're a monkey's uncle.
A monculus, monkunculus, homunculus. Yeah, it'd be a monkunculus. Yeah.
That's cool.
So this was probably my highlight of the week, I think, of the research was this pain
Slow week.
sensitivity. Yeah. Well, I did a lot of research, let's put it that way. I was listening to a lot of things by a lot of different people. So that was from Huberman Lab podcast, which we should put in the show notes.
Yeah.
Let's put in
Or,
the link.
as I'm now going to refer to it, the Hubermunculus.
The
lab.
Huberman podcast.
To be fair, I mean, I said slow week, but that's the most I've laughed in a while. So thanks for
Well, that's
that.
pretty sick. That's pretty cool. The Homunculus, I thought, was amazing.
Yeah.
Also cool in there that we can talk about in a bit was his protocol for fast recovery from injury.
Hmm.
So once we get through the injury part, then we can talk a little bit about what does he recommend
Cool.
for recovering.
Okay. So when you're telling me about all this stuff, what I'm thinking about is the age-old image that I have in my brain about building strength and size is you tear down the muscle and then you let it recover and it repairs itself and it knits itself together so it's bigger and
Hmm.
stronger. So that's something along that kind of pain
That's true, yeah.
line because
Hmm.
you get the DOMs, don't you? You get the aches and the pains afterwards, but it's not, people look forward to that, don't they? They're kind of like, oh, I've
Yeah.
worked hard because I can feel it in my body and this like that sensation people actually enjoy. So I suppose that's probably at the maybe the starting point of your body going, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. Yes, this tissue adaptability line. I think as you're starting to get to the point that you're doing enough damage, shall we say, or putting enough stress on the muscle that it needs to recover, you have to damage it a little bit, don't you? But this is this micro tear concept, isn't it? Where the muscle gets torn enough that it knits back together, like you say, knits back together, gets thicker and gets stronger and recovers from the exercise. What this was talking about with the tissue adaptability line is either over time you can apply a stress over time that is, say you went for, I don't know if running is a great example because you could run every day, and if the stress stimulus was low enough, you'd probably get better
Hmm.
over time if you did a little bit every day. But say you weren't conditioned and you tried to run, I don't know, even if it was 5K, like if I tried to run
Yeah.
5K every day and pushed a bit too hard, I'd get hurt for sure.
Oh
So
yeah.
you can put the same input in every day, and the tissue adaptability probably to start off with is like waving up and down and recovering, but you put more and more repetition into it, more and more frequency into it, and it comes down eventually to this symptom threshold, and then you go through it and it goes bang because the tissue can't recover
Yeah.
enough. Or you put a big load in, and that's where it comes in with weight training. Like if you go into the gym and try and squat too much, you put a big load on with no warm up, so the muscle isn't ready for it, and you're not conditioned and so on, and then you can hurt yourself that way.
Hmm. And I've got experience of both of those. But one which pops to my mind is trying to do a park run. So you talk about just going out running a 5K.
Yeah, man, I got hurt too on a park run.
So yeah, I literally started off this park run within 5 minutes, popped my calf because I'm just not used to that impact and
Mm,
that volume of whatever I was trying to do at the time. Just fancied a 5K. It doesn't seem like a big deal, does it? Really, it's like, oh, do you want to go for a run?
right.
Actually, if you're not used to running, and I stupidly finished the run with this like popped calf, put myself out for weeks. Just decision making at the time very poor. But it also happens or has happened recently to me in terms of doing a lot of double unders in CrossFit. So that constant repetition of volume. I think my calves have probably got about a 300 double under limit a week. Anything more than that, and they are not happy. They're going to go, and I often have to pull up because I can sense them. They're going to like they're starting to cry a bit in the workouts. So pairing up that with any sort of Olympic lifting, so any sort of like extending off onto the toes, that sort of movement, it just is a recipe for disaster for my calves. And that's not particularly under, a massive amount of stress from a load. That's just from that kind of fatigue or unconditioned element and it's all of a sudden just pop, gone.
And how long did it take you to work out that you could feel the injury coming? Because that's interesting, is it? That actually you feel it
Yeah.
and then you get hurt. So your like symptom line
Hmm.
is very close to the damage line, it
Super
sounds like, isn't
close.
it?
Yeah.
It's not giving you any warning saying, oh, Will, you should chill out because maybe in a little bit you're going to get hurt.
Do you know what? I would say it does, and I would say I probably ignored it because I'm stubborn. Um, and there's elements of like being competitive and wanting to finish things and having a bit of an addictive personality that makes me go, no, 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 I can push through, I can push through. And I'm like, nope, can't, gone. But I've got a lot better at that. so I kind of get a feeling because sometimes something just feels a little bit grouchy and like that'll kind of go as I get warmed up, and other times it's like no, this is getting worse and worse and worse.
Hmm.
So I've been able to catch it a lot better now, which for short term it's frustrating because I then have to do a different movement and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. However, within a week I can go back to doing the double unders or going running. Whereas if I let it kind of pop or tweak, I like to say tweak. So we've got lots of different
Mm.
definitions of injuries. But if it tweaks, it'll be a couple of weeks. If it pops, it'll be a while.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was thinking about when I was looking at all this injury content was, are you hurt or are you injured?
Hmm. Can I
Because then I
just,
was thinking, come on, mate.
I was just going to ask on the definition of injury, just before it completely
Mm.
goes and we move on to hurt or injured. You said about an external force. What was the
Mm.
definition again? Could you just,
So damage caused by an external force applied to the body, and then via intentional or unintentional means. But yeah, external force is interesting, isn't it? Because you basically hurt yourself when you're training, don't you?
yeah.
So there is no external force when you're doing a double under unless it's the reaction force of the ground on your
Yeah.
feet.
So
That's the thing. Yeah.
when you first said it, I thought external force. I thought about something hitting into me.
Mm.
I thought, well, when I've done that, that's not actually. There's not been that impact. However, there has been an external force, like you say. My feet hitting the ground. The ground is the
Yeah,
external force. The
that's the
barbell
force.
on
Yeah.
my back, as I'm doing a squat and my back pings or pops or deadlift or whatever. That's the external force, right? It's not so much as an
Yeah,
impact.
you're not getting hit by a car.
Yeah, okay. So when I
I think
sneeze and throw my back out or I just sleep wrong, can I claim I'm injured or am I hurt?
probably also injured because there's always a reaction, isn't it? But external force is the tricky one because that would be like an internal force, wouldn't it? But it would be better if
Hmm.
it was just said damage caused by a force applied to the body.
Yeah.
Result, and I think injury, damage caused by, because if you weren't in pain, would you think you're injured? Because then you'd have to, like, imagine when you, and we're going to get into your actual injuries now.
Yeah.
Just thinking right now, yeah, I suppose so. Because, like, for example, my hand, I can't really feel the fingers in my hand, which I would consider an injury, but it doesn't hurt
Hmm.
because I've got nerve damage in there.
But that's
And
the
it,
part of your body that is injured, so you can't feel like
yeah,
that
I'm just
part it
wondering,
doesn't
like, it
work.
doesn't necessarily have to result in pain, does it? There was some pain, but I would say it's
Hmm.
still injured somehow. And then, yeah, so I was thinking, are you hurt or are you injured? Is interesting because then I thought about some different ways to classify, let's call it injury or hurt. Like you can train, but it hurts. So I can do everything normally, but something hurts. Like if I've got a, and even a blister on the hand is a bit tricky, isn't it? But like if you've cut yourself or something like if I cut my arm crashing a downhill bike, I could still go to the gym and train. So I don't have to do anything differently, but I've got some pain on my body somewhere. It hurts, but I have to train around it, which I've done before. So like I can break my arm, for example, but
Yeah.
I can still train and do a bunch of things, so I don't have to stop. Then I thought about it hurts, but I have to do something completely different now. I have to go off my training objective and focus solely on repairing whatever this is to be able to
Hmm.
get back to my training objective.
Hmm.
And then the one that I've done a few times is it hurts and I'm smashed to pieces, which probably the last two are the most, or three maybe are the most interesting ones. Like it hurts, I'm in the hospital, and now I need to go to a completely different place to get
Yeah.
myself back on track to get out of here.
There's degrees of injury. Like that's got
Yeah,
to
I
factor
think
in.
for sure. Yeah, in am I just hurt or am I actually injured? So I suppose what we're interested in is how do you, it's not how do you train when you're hurt, is it? And it's a bit like what you're saying, that you can push through some pain because that's already something hurts, doesn't it? Like
Hmm.
again, when everybody is training, if everyone's training enough to drive some sort of stimulus, then there's already some pain there, isn't there? So probably people are familiar with pain. It is super interesting though, how long it takes to start to understand what is a pain that's going to result in an injury and what's just how would you describe it?
The burn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a burn and then there's like damage on the way, isn't there?
Yeah.
And the
There's
difference between those two is a little bit subtle sometimes.
there's that bit because you don't want to get hurt, and a lot of the time when you're training, like that burn is a painful sensation,
Mm.
but that burn is, oh well, unless you do something just
There's
wacky.
different types of burns as well, isn't there? I guess that's the thing, is it? Like
Yeah.
that muscle tension burn generally feels all right, doesn't it? But I think the most tricky one is like, remember when we got it on one of the vlogs when we were training in my gym here, and I was squatting, and I was like, this is okay, this is
Yeah.
okay, this is
Yeah.
okay, and then my back, and I was like, this is really not okay. This is not fine at all, and that still took me out for
Yeah.
a little while, didn't it? And that took, if you go back, not even probably 5 years, I would have just gone for the next set. But that was one of the super interesting things that I saw in here, and I've thought about it before. But you get in this loop of, no, I need to train, no, I need to train, no, I need to train. A couple of interesting things that I listened to. One from John Meadows, who's super cool guy. He's unfortunately passed away, but helped me when I had that big injury when I was in the hospital for a long time. And he said, no exercise is so important that you can't do it. Like no movement is so critical that you can't find something else to replace it.
Hmm.
So like if something starts to hurt, like if you start to feel like you're going to tear a pec or whatever on the bench press, just don't do it.
Hmm.
Like if the goal is to train for the next 20 years or for the rest of your life, to take out 1 week or 1 month or whatever off something to rehab, that is massively better than what, like you say, you go a little bit too hard on your double unders and then you've got to take a month off
Yeah.
and then everything's in the tank, isn't it? So that was, obviously it's always there in the back of my mind, but to hear quite a few different people say, well, it doesn't matter, does it, in the long run
Hmm.
of things? If it's not your job, like we're not getting paid to do this, are we? So
No.
that doesn't really matter that much, does it? But to check the ego is complicated.
Yeah, I agree. And when it's such a an intrinsic part of what you do day to day, to then not do it can be like quite a scary thought. I think that sometimes you just have to rest, don't you? You just have to rest and not do the thing, but then judging when that is appropriate and when you can just keep training or doing something different, and that's going to be kind of subjective to the person and the scenario. I think one thing that kind of talk to people and come across quite a lot is that once they've had a break, and even if they have a break from not having injury, maybe it's just like work gets in the way or they just go off the boil, and then eventually they'll come back to it. And it
Mm.
really doesn't take that long. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't take that long to get back to where roughly you were. Like you always say to me, like once it's in, it's in. Like the strength, once that
Hmm.
strength is in there, and you've
Hmm.
spent all that time building it, it's in there. It's not going to go away overnight, a week, 2 weeks, a couple of months. You can quite effectively get that back if you train in the right way when you come back to it. So it just popped into my mind. I got some really cool people that I train with that they take a bit of time off and they come back to it and they're like, oh, I don't feel good. I used to be able to do this. I used to be able to do that. It's that comparison is the thief of joy. Like you're
Mm.
comparing yourself to when you were like on it, training regularly, and now you've taken that break. But they're soon just flying again. Like just that consistency and coming back to it and just not giving up, not letting your head go, oh, what's the point? Um, yeah, it's really, really interesting when you talk to people and see people kind of come in and out.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are interesting about that though. One, to get to that point that you've got that strength in the bank, you have to have been consistent at some point, don't you?
Hmm.
Which also means running the risk a little bit of injury and playing on that. Because if you think back, like where I got strong, I was on the limit of injury all the time, probably every week.
Mm.
Like the way me and Leon used to go at it in the gym was completely nuts. And then but you can take it. I think that would be super interesting as well to see, like when you're, well, we talking like when you're 20 or probably even 20 to 30, the amount of punishment that your body can put up with and recover from. So this like tissue adaptability line must be insanely high. And then if you're a little bit wired up on the limit, your pain threshold as well can be reasonably high.
Mm.
So you can really push and make a huge amount of progress. So I think like to build the strength in the first place takes some time, doesn't it? And hopefully, like what I didn't do, and I was thinking about the things that caused me a problem, and that one, I had some injuries where it wasn't related to training and I had to stop. But I've also had some injuries where I didn't pay attention enough to them because they weren't bad enough to stop me and make me focus on them 100% to
Mm.
recover. Those injuries are the ones that are causing me the biggest problem and still continue to cause me problem now.
Okay.
So I was thinking, well, actually, what I should do with those injuries is stop right now and fix those things like I fixed these other ones.
Hmm.
Because then I'm back to, if we're talking about training for the rest of your life and it doesn't matter if you take a month off, then I should take a month off for each
Yeah.
one of these things and fix them. No, it's really super interesting. Then what I thought was actually this thought of like taking some time off, if it's part of your identity, is actually quite liberating, because you think, well, actually, if it's part of my identity, then the goal is just to be able to continue to do this anyway. So whatever it is, as long as I'm doing the best I can with what I've got right now, I can't do any more than that, can I? Like I've got to where I am, I've got hurt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If the goal is just to continue training, then I just get better as fast as I can without injuring myself again and carry on. Because for sure you can't go back, can you? I think that's the other thing that actually was a motivator for me when I got really hurt. The motivation was always to get back,
Mm.
but I didn't ever get back to where I was, 100% where I was, because I'm hurt, like I'm still hurt. But always the thing in my mind was, well, this is not it. Like it's not finished now. Like doctors are telling me, no, you'll never do this again, you'll never do that again. I was like, yeah, don't worry, we'll see.
Yeah.
And that was like motivation for me to then carry on and do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
for me, I think it's quite a liberating thing to hear these guys say, yeah, don't worry, you don't need to do all these things. If you're going to be training for the rest of your life, take a month. Doesn't mean you have to stop training hard, does it? I think that's the other interesting thing we could talk about is what did we do when we did have these injuries, which were
Yeah.
of this grade that mean you have to train around it. What did we do then? Because I think that's quite interesting.
Cool. I can dive into mine because we've only got so much time, and you've got a laundry
Dive in there.
list.
I've got some key ones, I think.
Yeah. So I I never could exactly pinpoint where this injury was, but I have a rough idea. So I had a tear in my meniscus. So on my left knee, there's a bit of crescent-shaped cartilage, which is a stabilizing pad for the knee. And if you imagine it like that shape inside your knee, and there was a tear, so this bit was kind of cut almost all the way through, like three-quarters of the way through. It was just a rip, really jaggedy old rip. I believe I did that when one week, I think we went mountain biking in Mousehold Heath. I was doing kickboxing or Thai boxing at the kick stop, and I played football as well with a couple of mates. And I believe I did it from football. Like the amount of people that I speak to who have knee injuries from playing football, I think that was what did it. It's that twisting,
Mm.
that whole thing. And I never got it sorted. So I think I was probably 20 years old. 20 years old when I did that. So what would that have
I was
been?
20 years old when you did it.
Yeah, in my
Yeah.
early 20s.
2003.
Yeah,
2003.
early 20s would have been. And I eventually, so I lived with it, and it was horrible, like pain in the night, getting up and down stairs. I remember it really clearly at work. I had to hobble up the stairs holding on to the railing. So 2015, I got that sorted.
Just the 12 years later. But this is
Yeah.
exactly the type of injury I'm talking about, isn't it? This one where, like, if it actually stops you dead in your tracks and you can't do what you want to do, all of the energy and focus goes into that. If
Yeah.
you can still do a bit, you're like, yeah, I'll be all right. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be all right. Yeah, I'll be all right. 15 years later.
Yeah. So the I went through keyhole surgery, so it was a debridement. So they just tidied up the tear. They didn't. Nothing was fixed. Nothing was repaired. It was just okay. What will happen is they'll clean it up with keyhole, and that will reduce the irritation because it was the rip and the tear and that jaggedy edge that was causing real irritation in my knee.
So was it
Um,
rubbing on something, was it?
yeah, it's just like just flapping about and all grotty in there. So they tidied it up, and I've got the timeline. So I look back over my Instagram. There's a big scroll. Um, I had the surgery on the 22nd of March, and all the way through that, I had a physio plan, stuck to the plan very
I remember that.
rigorously. So I did all the physio stuff that I had to do. I've still got the plans somewhere as well. I think that's a key thing. People don't give physio the time it deserves. Like if you go to a physio and they give you a rehab plan before you get injured, maybe you've just got some sort of issue. A lot of people don't just follow through because they don't think it's doing and they don't give it enough time to actually work. So that'd be my number one tip is just actually do the things that they're telling you to do and give it enough time.
Would make sense, wouldn't
It would. I don't know why people don't do it. 3 weeks anyway. So 3 weeks post surgery, I was doing seated overhead press and dips. I was doing 100 dips for time. So not putting any pressure on my leg, just hobbling out to the shed gym as I had at the time, out on the patio, and yeah, seated overhead press with a barbell. And then fast forward 2 more weeks, I was doing standing press. So I was able to support that weight with overhead press and weighted dips with 20 kilos in a backpack. So I built that up. So that was looking at 6 weeks after surgery. I was doing upper body stuff and trying to then, weight bearing things.
it?
8 weeks after surgery, I did my first squat with a barbell. Just the barbell, 20 kilos, not even to depth, just doing like really tentatively, kind of trying to get back into the movement and trying to take some of the fear out of it. And then the week after, I squatted with weight. So 9 weeks after my surgery, I was squatting with weight. And then looking forward on my feed, there's deadlifts, squats, there's just everything back in
Yeah,
there.
because I think after that was probably when you started to go down the old powerlifting road, wasn't it?
Yep.
And then you got pretty strong, didn't you? You would pull in like a 200 kilo
Yeah, strong.
deadlift at some point after that, 160 or 170 squat or something like that.
I think I maybe got a 150, 155 in reps, maybe. I mean, I've
Yeah.
never been strong, but
But
that's strong
but we're
enough.
talking about a base of not very strong, aren't we? Because you weren't really training that much before. So you like were doing bits and pieces active, but even not really active. I was thinking that as well when you said that you'd done all those things in that week. And if you think about this tissue adaptability curve and the thing just
Yeah,
going down towards getting hurt, maybe that was just an overload of all the
yeah,
stuff and then a twist on top of that, and you're kind of done, aren't you?
yeah.
So it's pretty impressive to then do that, not have the background of the strength training before because you didn't build it and then lose it and then come back to it, did you? You
No,
built it from
I
scratch.
I dabbled. I think I was kind of,
It was really a dabble on it.
yeah, not very consistent. I had the stuff in the, I think I might have had like a mass, like years and years and years of not doing like any weight training, and then
Yeah.
kind of started back up, and yeah, my kind of my key kind of takeaways. If I could turn back time, which I can't, I would have just got it seen to straight away. Well, actually, that's a lie. If I could turn back time, I wouldn't have done those three things because I would have avoided the injury. So I don't wish that I'd have got the injury fixed. I wished I had not have gone out and played football to have the injury in the first place because it hasn't
Yeah.
it had an
You'd have done
impact.
something else.
Could have done. It had an impact on my life every single day, and why I didn't just go and sort that out at the time, I've got no idea. Because now I would say it's 90 to 95% better from having the
Hmm.
surgery. It's not fixed. Like sometimes it will hurt, sometimes it will just like give me a little bit of jip every now and again. It's not perfect, it's quite slow. If I do squats, I'm really kind of just slow in and out, haven't got like, as much bounce and mobility and range as the other leg, but I can still do everything that I could do before and more now because I'm trained in other stuff.
And when did you say it was? 2015, and you did it in 2003.
Something like that, yeah. Around there. I
So we're
would
also
say there's
talking about
10
another 10
years.
years
Yeah.
later. So you're like 10 years down the line and
Yeah.
still improving. So there's light at the end of the injury tunnel, that little one for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's a fairly common one. Like I hear when I talk to people
Mm.
and they say, "Oh yeah, I've got this issue with my knee," and it's like, "Yes, my meniscus." There's like three people at the gym with
It's super
meniscus
common, I think, isn't it? It's like
tears.
the most common thing, probably. Because also mine's a bit tweaky, but it's the same sort of thing. It's like a little bit tweaky, but it's never been tweaky enough that I think, oh, I can't do this. So I keep like going on the, maybe I'll go and get someone to look at it. Would probably make sense. Interesting points that you mentioned there about how you recovered. This I also did, and also listened to it from people like Jocko and Jeff Nippard and so on. And basically, like when you're coming back, just start where you are with what you can do. Like whatever you can do, you can start there, can't you? So I also did similar when I did my leg. It was like I was like, oh, I can't move my leg. Okay, then I'm going to do pull-ups. I'll do dips, and actually managed to build a lot of strength there. Because I remember you doing those dips now. Because I remember being in your back garden and us going like head to head on dips, and you just like doing dips and dips and dips and dips and dips and dips. It was
9 week
pretty
dip
sick.
program.
And I think you've still got a chest from those dips.
I have got a pretty decent,
That's probably what that's from, isn't it? So
pretty
when you
decent
say like
rack
you
on me.
build the thing and you don't lose it, that imagine how many dips you did then. How many thousands of dips would that be?
Yeah. Do you know what? Because not being vain or anything, but I do have a decent chest. It's not particularly strong, but it's very aesthetic. And do you know what it is? When I was a teenager and I wasn't in shape and I had man boobs, what I used to do was I used to walk around. I used to be very hunched over and be very self-conscious of it. So in high school, I didn't like it because if I walked upright, you could see I had, you
That's
know,
banger time.
yeah, which is not what you want as a young man. And in my room, I used to think, okay, what can I do about this? I used to do press ups like in my
Right.
room all the time because I thought if I can like even this out somehow,
Oh no, you made it worse. No.
yeah, and then they just got bigger. They got bigger. But I genuinely think like that was the
Yeah,
you know, kind of building out because yeah, I got some nice bangers on me.
yeah, that's pretty well developed. So that interesting. Also, what was mentioned is building confidence, which you also said like with
Mm,
your squat, again, like start where you are, but you don't need to rush back to
mm,
get to where you were, no? Because you need to
mhm,
get some confidence that the thing is going to hold up. Like, am
mhm.
I actually recovered or not? And this also, like step by step, there's no rushes there to get back. If you want to train for your whole life, then just build it up slowly. No, you don't need to jump back in there and smash yourself straight away. I think this is more common than you think as well. The confidence building is really quite important, and it connects quite well to my, let's say, like my worst injury or the one that stopped me the most.
Mm.
Because I was looking through my list, I've got like 28 or something like that, from a bunch of cuts in my eyebrows, broken nose, did both my thumbs, had to have surgery, broken right ankle, broken hand, broken foot, twisted knee, broke this arm 4 times. I broke that arm.
You'll get it.
Shoulder I've done.
You'll get it
Yeah, I'll
next
get it
time.
done properly. Yeah. Shoulder I've done a couple of times, snowboard. I crashed a mountain bike once and had to get my knee scrubbed clean with a wire brush because I thought it was going to be okay. God damn. That was
Oh.
the most painful thing. I think there's two mountain bike crashes that I had that they definitely hurt and I had to stop training, but it wasn't like this sort of deviation completely of away from a goal. I was just stupid with the first one where I cut my knee, and it was full of dirt basically. And I
Mm.
sort of like rinsed it off a bit with a bottle of water while I was there at the
Oof.
bike park, and then left it like a week, and it healed over, it scabbed over, and it went brown,
Oh
like
God.
completely brown. So I went to the walk-in center, and the woman looked at it and was like, "When did you do that?" And I was like, "Oh, like a week ago or something." She's like, "Well, it's like massively infected in there, and we're going to need to clean it out." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Thinking she was going to give me some anesthetic. She literally got a wire brush, and she got some like gas and air stuff, put the gas and air thing on me and was like breathing. I nearly hit the roof because she
Mm.
scrubbed the skin off to
Yeah.
get to the thing
Yuck.
underneath. That was crazy. So that sucked. And then I also put a handlebar in my leg. And have you seen that scar I got on my leg? It's like a smile on my leg. That was a
Hmm.
handlebar. I went in my leg and opened my leg, and it was bleeding like crazy. And I was with one of my friends from work, Stevie Danger, and we like put my leg up and they're trying to like stop the bleeding, man, because it was bleeding so much. And it took like 45 minutes for an ambulance to get there or something. There was just like blood everywhere. They just stitched it up in the end with a plastic, like a plastic surgeon stitched it up. But there was a drain tube in it, and they had to pull the drain tube out. I think I stayed in hospital for like 4 days for a cut in my leg so that it would heal up, because I was just thinking, well, what couldn't I do? But I didn't even go home. I stayed in the hospital with this drain tube in my leg, and then after 4 days, it had healed up enough that I think they took the tube out and they pulled it out without any anesthetic. And
Eesh.
this was another one, like the scrubbing with the brush, man. I hit the roof again. It was wild. So they were good. Had it by my leg, broke that little finger, had to have a wiring. Tore an tendon in my elbow, which is another one that is still giving me grief now. When I was training for that MMA fight, did my elbow
Mm.
and did my ribs as well at the same time. Broke my ribs, tore my calf off, and then the naughty ones was riding enduro, training for enduro. I had quite a big crash and hit the handlebar of the bike in my stomach, and we didn't know at the time. I went to the hospital, hit the handlebar in my stomach, and hit my hand on the handlebar, and so my wrist was broken. That was clear, and then the my stomach was hurting, and I took me to the hospital. That turned out after like 2 days in the hospital, and I'd gone green. I got transferred to another hospital because this one didn't think there was anything wrong with me, that I'd split my intestine and had to go straight in for surgery. And there were a bunch of complications from that, and resulted in like a big infection. And I was in intensive care for 2 weeks and in the hospital for 6 weeks, I think, altogether.
Mm.
And when I went in, I was 82 kilos. And when I came out, I was 57 kilos. So I went in pretty fit, like probably actually the fittest I've ever been, I would say, probably cardio wise, not the strongest I've ever been, but very strong still. And that was one of the reasons why. So this is also a good reason to train. Is one of the reasons why I made it through the whole thing, was
Hmm.
because there was enough there for my body to like use. It was also interesting in this tissue adaptability chart that the amount of energy that your cells can use drives how quickly they can recover and how sort of well you can become again once you get injured.
Hmm.
So that was like the biggest one. That 6 weeks was like a lifetime, because I was out. I think I was in coma for like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then intensive care for another two, I think, and then got out onto a proper ward for two. And when I woke up, I couldn't do anything basically, because I was like tied down to the bed with all these wires and stuff in, couldn't breathe. So I had the like a track in my throat, and that was helping me breathe. So I couldn't speak because this thing was in my throat. I couldn't eat because my stomach was still open. Couldn't get out of bed because of all of that, and I was tied to it. So basically, I wouldn't say we're starting from zero, but it was pretty close to zero, because while I was in the coma, everything also stopped working. Like my lungs stopped working. I think the only thing that was working in the end was my kidney. Like everything else stopped working. So we got to almost zero,
Hmm.
and then I remember just lying there and just trying to be patient and thinking like, I'll just be patient. Like I'll just be patient. I'll just be patient. Just lying in the hospital, being patient, but not knowing, like I didn't know when I was going to get out, if I
Yeah.
was going to get out. And all I wanted to do was go. I didn't really realize at the time, but all I actually wanted to do was just see outside, because it was in this downstairs ICU unit. It was just really dark all the time. And when you're on all the painkillers and stuff they put you on, everything feels like a really weird dream. Like there
Yeah.
was a tissue machine that was making this really crazy noise, like cranking on and off all the time. And I thought it was like a crusher or something out of a movie, like next door to me, all sorts of crazy stuff going on. So all I wanted to do was basically just get out of this intensive care unit, but I couldn't do anything. And I kept trying to get up. So I still had this thing in my mind about like, I just want to get up and go and get going again. But at some point, I had to just realize you can't get up and get going again. You're just going to have to trust these people around that they're going to take care of you enough. At some point, you're going to get to go basically upstairs and see the sun again.
Mm.
So like literally I had to start from zero and just learn. I think I learned to eat and swallow first. Then after a while, another 2 weeks, they took that track thing out of my throat and then I could start to speak. Then after I could eat, I had to learn how to get in the chair. And then I remember really clearly one day standing up because then I had to learn to walk again. So I really went from zero, but like there, I didn't at that point have in my mind that I wanted to get back to where I was. I just wanted to be able to do something, like anything, to be able to move, basically. Because I remember someone asking me, like, what's the first thing that you'll do when you get out or something like that? And I was like, well, I just want to be able to move. I just want to be able to go for a walk. And
Hmm.
they were like, well, you've done all that and you only want to be able to go for a walk. Because well, I got to start somewhere, haven't I? Like, I just want to be able to walk. So I would practice walking in my room. When they eventually let me go up to the ward, I would sort of watch TV most of the day, and then I would just walk around and I would count how many laps I could do in a day around the room and try and get stronger just going around the room, just walking. And then eventually, when they let me go home, I started to train already quite quickly, but I shouldn't have been doing anything because my stomach was still healing up. But for some reason, I think it's because the last doctor I saw said, "Oh, you'll never straight like you're not going to be the same again. You're not going
Yeah.
to be the same. You're not the same person you were before." And at the time, I was really devastated. For that day, I was absolutely gutted, man, because I was like, okay, well, she knows what she's talking about, then that's
Mm.
it. And I was like, well, that's not it, though, is it? So I went back home and a little bit soon I had a kettlebell at home and I started to do only like 2 weeks out of this thing, started to do like floor press on the floor and stuff like that. But I had one broken wrist still. And they told me my wrist wasn't broken. And in the hospital, I was thinking, well, I don't want to ride again. But that sort of feeling started to go away. And I was thinking, yeah, actually, what I would really like to do is ride. But I couldn't do anything except walk. So I just started to walk. So if you come to like just do what you can do, that was literally all I could do.
Mm.
And like I remember walking to the supermarket and thinking I can't get home because I'm not strong enough to get home because I was still like 57 kilos or whatever it was, super weak. And I think your body is trying to do a lot of things, so it's trying to recover and so on, so it needs a lot of energy. So I
Yeah.
should have just been resting, but the only thing I kind of looked forward to in the day was like go for a walk to the supermarket. But like with a few days, I go to the supermarket and walk back, and then built my confidence going there and walking back. And then after a little while, I would do like laps of the supermarket, and then some weeks later, I would start walking into town. And in the end, I built up like over weeks, yeah, over quite some weeks, because I think I went back to work in the end about 2 months later. And by the time I went back to work 2 months later, I was walking about 10 kilometers in the morning, I think. I would like walk for hours. It would just
Yeah.
like walk because that's all I could do. So I would just walk for hours. And then when I went back to work, the guys there, and this was really quite soon after I'd come out, were like, "Oh, do you want to like train for something?" Because I think without a goal to train for, I'd have really been stuck. So like there wasn't really the goal yet because I was a bit conscious of like my physical condition was maybe a bit of a stretch to think, yeah, I'm going to race bikes again or something like
Hmm.
that. So it was like the first thing I thought was, okay, well, I've done this walking. I'll try and run. I'll try and start running because I didn't like running. I really like if there's anything that I wouldn't do, it's running. Like if I could choose, it would be I will choose not to run. But it is the only thing I could do. That's it.
Well, you don't need to run away from anything if you're strong enough, right?
Wasn't strong enough in the end, was I? So then I just had to work out how to run. So we signed up for a trail. It wasn't at that point, it wasn't a trail marathon, it was a trail, well, just a trail run. So it was like a 10K trail run, but a pretty chill one. And I just started to run a little bit more. But I didn't have a doubt in my mind at that point then that I was going to be able to do this run. I was like, I'm going to do this. And we signed up for the run. And on the way through that, I then signed up for a half marathon as well afterwards. So I was like, okay, get that one done. Just do what I can, do what I can. And I started to really train quite a lot. And all I could train was legs, because I had this arm was done, still in a mess. Stomach was still healing up. So I couldn't do any weights or anything. So like my weight wasn't really increasing other than just being able to eat more. So did that, doing what I can do. Started to build some strength on top of the running by I got a weight vest. So then I didn't have to carry anything in my hands. I could just put the vest on, and then it's like I mentioned John Meadows before, and I sent him a message because when I come out of hospital, I wasn't really thinking about riding, but I was thinking about, can I train to get stronger to recover? So like, when can I squat, for example, was what I was really interested in because I knew my legs worked. So I was thinking, well, when can I squat with weight? And he said to me, like, there's no rush to squat with weight. I could find the email actually. There's no rush to squat with weight, because whether you squat today with weight or in 4 weeks with weight, in a lifetime of training, this isn't going to make any difference.
Yeah.
Like, don't hurt yourself now, because that can really make a mess. Because he had a similar problem with like a digestive tract issue, and he had a bunch of hernias and really had a massive problem because he like rushed back into training too soon.
I
So I
wonder,
started to train. So, go on, mate.
I wonder how many people have been shortchanged by medical professionals limiting beliefs. How many people would have not?
Wild, man, yeah.
Just imagine that. Like, how many people have gone, oh, yeah, I'm never going to be the same again. Boom, depression, gone.
Well, honestly, like, I'm not really one for that because I spend a lot of time thinking about those things. But that was a rough day. I think that was a day or a couple of days at least. I remember coming out of there and being like devastated. Like thinking that's really like her verdict is the verdict. And I was like, this is no verdict. Like, but I'd also not, like, I'd had a lot of injuries and recovered from a lot of things up to that point, but never anything like that because I also didn't have the feeling in this hand and so on. So imagine if that was like the first time you got hurt. And I think that's also a bit of a topic for people, isn't it? It's like they get hurt and they think, well, I'm hurt now. Am I ever going to be okay again? Until I never want to get hurt again. So then there's like this risk aversion topic as well, isn't it? I don't, and I've turned down my level of risk that I'm willing to take, but I'm not completely
Switched
risk
off.
averse. But yeah, but I imagine that's pretty big because that was the other thing when I was talking to this doctor. I was thinking, you don't, like, it's clear you don't know anything about sport or training. Like, you don't know what I was doing before, and you don't know what I'm going to do now. And she almost stopped me, almost. And I was like, no, because I thought, well, I'll just try. I'll just go home and I'll try.
That's it.
And I was lucky because because they told me, like, don't do anything. Like, they told me just to lie down and don't do anything. I was like, well, I'm not going to lie down, don't do anything. I probably should have laid down for a little while and not done much, but I was like, nah. And I had a tiny little kettlebell, one of those yellow, like, kids kettlebell almost. And I'd just carry that in the one hand that I could carry. I'd just carry that around and I'd press that and I'd lie on the floor because I didn't have a bench or anything. So I'd just lie on the floor and I'd floor press this like 3 kilo kettlebell. But I was so small, I could hardly even get out of bed. And I was like, well, yeah, that was tiring to just get up in the morning. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do what I can do. And the walking, which is super interesting because in one of the points of the Huberman protocol for like faster recovery is zone 2 cardio or just walking really helps clear out, and I think you could call it glymphatic system. So the system that pulls out all of the waste product and so on from your system when you're injured. It really helps to do that. So I was out every day walking. Like I say, it wasn't 10 minutes, it was like 10 kilometers. So I'd out like walk for 2 hours. At the start, I couldn't walk because I had all this like huge scar on my stomach, and that would rub on my clothes and it would hurt. So I couldn't stay out walking for long enough. But in the end, obviously that all calmed down. I have to go and change all that stuff. But yeah, I just started doing what I could do. And to go from not being able to walk, like I remember taking like a first step in the hospital and thinking, oh yeah,
There we go.
I got this. I got this. I remember the slippers I had on. So I took that first step and I was like, yeah, all right. And I took another one. I walked around the hospital. Then I did this 10K and then did a half marathon, trail half marathon. I'd never trail run before either. So that was quite nice because I was like learning this new thing as well. It's a completely new thing, completely new level of fitness, new sport, super accessible. Like just put your trainers on and go. Had stuff outside the house was pretty.
I think that that's probably quite an important point in terms of that recovery because you didn't go back to what you were doing and allow yourself to compare your former self to your
Was
current
impossible.
self and go,
Yeah.
I can't do that stuff. You've engaged with a novelty factor. You've also had some people around you did they sign up to it with you and train for
Yeah, I
it?
didn't
Like,
realize it at the time, but what they were trying to do was get me to do something. I think they're a bit concerned that because I was doing so much before, that now I wasn't doing
mm,
anything, that they were like looking out thinking, well, it was a bit much, honestly. I remember the feeling afterwards. I was ruined afterwards, but because I'm a bit stubborn, I was like, well, I'm not, I come last out of all of those guys, because they were fit. And I was coming out of hospital 3 months.
yeah,
Yeah, but I've still got the picture, I think, somewhere. And yeah, in hindsight, I think they didn't really want to do it themselves, but I think they did it in order for like
that's
me,
cool.
'cause I'm competitive as well. And I was thinking, I'll do it then. And it was a local thing and it was like 10 euros or whatever, but just gave me a goal to shoot at.
Maybe that was their one shot to beat you at something.
Well, they smashed me that day,
Yeah.
but not the next ones.
But yeah, I just think that's quite cool because there's that level of friction that you go through as well from learning a new thing and like the struggle and the kind of the enjoyment and everything that you get from reaching new kind of milestones in a new thing. And I know that you kind of often kind of like to play with learning new stuff and like even thinking about like when you did juggling before trying to learn a new thing to engage your brain and you've always been into, you know, doing different stuff and trying different things. And I wonder how much that kind of helped you out getting back to where you are now by just not going back to a similar thing that you could compare yourself against. Probably quite cool.
Yeah, I was all, I think, although I don't say that I was thinking about getting back to the waist on, that's part, I don't know if it's the right thing to say or not, but that's part of my identity to train and to be in shape and so on and to be strong and capable and so on. So I couldn't really imagine a life either without that. Whatever level it was, I would
Mm,
try and be the best that I could be because I did have at work, and I remember doing this after I went back to work, and at that point I could walk and so on. I had at work all of my gym stuff. Like I put the squat rack at work. The guy said,
yeah,
"Yeah, you can put it at work
yeah,
so you can train." And I remember starting to train again there, and I got really strong really quick because like
mhm,
my really strong really quick. I started to recover strength fast, but I remember like doing pretty decent sets of deadlifts and stuff in there.
mhm,
So I did want to get back there, but I just couldn't. And I was thinking, well, literally, like, if all I can do is walk, then I'm going to have to walk, and that's it. And I'm just going to walk every day. And I didn't have any more of a plan than that. Basically, that was just all I
yeah,
could do for something to do. And I did that, did the trail run, did the half marathon. And the cool thing about trail running, and you're right, I really enjoy this process of getting better at something. And I don't really so much enjoy the process of doing like a 0.2% improvement unless I'm really into the thing. And I
mm,
think that's where like training for me, I've given up on the idea, really, honestly, of getting like really, really strong training. It's not really about that for me anymore. But riding bikes and learning about bikes and so on, there I'm in this like points of percentage improvement in terms of knowledge and so on.
yeah,
But with this, with the trail running, I could really see this progress every time, especially coming from this really low level. No, like I'd never done it before. I basically like start to walk, start to do this thing, and then after we did the 10K one, we did a half, so 21K, and then the end of the year in November we did a ultra marathon. 2,700 meter elevation ultra marathon.
Mm.
So I was like out of the hospital in January and
Yeah.
did an ultra marathon in November. So that was pretty sick. And just to have some goals and be able to work towards those, and actually felt pretty good by the end of the year. I think I was about 70 kilos again by the end
Yeah.
of the year. I think it was pretty cool. But that was really like a start from scratch. Couldn't do anything at all. This is the only option I've got, like full rebuild job.
Hmm.
And then, well, you mentioned about physio and so on. I was having like communal physio there, and that really didn't work for this hand. And that was a mistake that I made. That I went to a really excellent hand clinic that deal with like nerve injury because I got nerve injury in this hand, and it was 50 euros an hour, I think, or 100 euros an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't, I'm not paying that.
Yeah.
I didn't pay 100 euros an hour, and now then my hand doesn't work,
Mm.
basically. But what would I pay now to get that back? That would, do you know what I mean? That was some investment that I
Yeah.
didn't. Then that was a mistake.
Yeah.
But the result of that was like a few months later, I started to ride again. So I did the ultra marathon, and then I started to ride again in like the February after that. Thought this was recovered, fell off the bike on a trail, put my hand down. As I put my hand down, it just snapped my arm because it wasn't healed. So then I had to go through a loop again of like, I've gone through all of that. I've got back on the bike that hurt me in the first place, and now I've hurt myself again.
Hmm.
So I had to go like back to the beginning. Okay, what can I do? And that time with just an arm in plaster, but I had to get surgery on this one. So I had to have a plate in it because I didn't have a plate in it before. Then I started again with that, but could do a lot more. So on that
Hmm.
one, I could squat already because I was already doing that. I got a funny feeling I was even deadlifting because you remember there's a guy on Casual Athlete from New Zealand, I think, who was like deadlifting with straps around him. So he'd like hook it to the bar because he hurt himself. He like hurt his hands or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I do
Yeah.
remember that guy.
And
Yeah.
he'd like hook onto the bar and pull
Yeah.
that. So yeah, basically I started again with that one. And then again with the leg after that when I was skiing and broke my leg. And
Hmm.
then there was another one. Like, what can I do? Like, where am I now? Yeah, okay. Get over that initial disappointment in yourself somehow, isn't it? It's like, what did I do that for? Now what
Yeah.
am I going to do? So, well, you've done it now. So
Yeah.
what are you going to do now?
There's the I knew it. Oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I knew I should have done it. Well, you can't change
Yeah.
that. You made the decisions at the time, and this is what you've got. And I
Yeah.
think there's a little bit of, yeah, like you say, you had that worst day, but then just listening to you talk about it, it's like, okay, so what can I do? And that I think is a big difference for people that they just don't want to try. It's like it's too much effort to
Well, it's
try
hard, isn't it?
things
It's
that
hard. And
that
maybe
they
you're not going to succeed, no?
yeah. So they feel the disappointment, and then it's almost like I don't want to start again. It's too hard to start again. But what do you actually get as a result of that? You
Yeah, you're going to get nothing.
Yeah, but you get like we were talking about, training as part of your like what makes you as part of your identity, and you'll quite soon find if you don't make that effort, you're going to find out exactly who you are without that. Like,
Which might
You
not be who
you
you
are
want to be. No?
Yeah, and that might not be who you want to be because you really enjoyed training and now you think that you can't do it anymore. But there just sticks with me about that doctor saying you're not the same, you can't do that. That doctor is in all these people's heads, their little inner critic to go, you'll never be the same again. So why you can't do that? Why try? Whereas if you push against that and go, well, let me try. I think that's the key thing. You said, well, I'm going to try. So that I think if I had to take away any key points from your story, because it's a cool story, bro. I don't mean it's and I know I say it as a story, but I was experiencing it alongside you. I didn't do any of the hard work or have any of the injury, but that was a bad time. That was a really bad time,
It's a bit rough, boy. Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of people who hopefully they'll listen to this podcast and fingers crossed they won't have been turned off by the injury detail. I'll do a pre-roll to warn them about the injury detail. But things to take away is just try. Like, what can you do? Try and then build off that thing. It's the same as any training, isn't it? Whether you're injured or not. Can I do the thing? Yes. Okay. Let me try it. Okay. Now let me try the next element of that
Yeah.
thing. If it's whatever, a bicep curl. Okay. Can I do two of those? Can I do three? Can I do three bit heavier? Um, that's it's progressive overload. You basically progressive overload your entire body from a standing start to now, mostly functional. But when did you? That was 10 years ago now, right? Because
Yeah,
Chloe was on the way.
2014.
Yeah,
2004, December 14th, 2014. Got out of the hospital January
January
29th, the day,
2015.
no, yeah, 2015 when Chloe was born. And then was like, yeah, okay, let's get going. And then did all this other stuff as well afterwards. So like
Yeah.
that one thing that I think is quite important, or I don't know if helps me is the right way to say it. But when I'm injured, I don't want to be injured. So it's like laser clarity and focus about what to do to then recover.
Mm.
So it's like I'm not thinking like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that, or should I, am I gonna stay up late and I do it? No. Like you got to do all the things right. And when I was injured with this leg injury, I was I had a better understanding of how to recover from the previous injury anyway, and it wasn't as bad. But actually, in terms of mechanical damage, was pretty rough.
Mm.
When I broke my ankle, I tore all the ligaments off my ankle. Had to have a wire in the bottom of it, and I broke my leg at the top of my leg. So my leg was ruined basically.
Yeah.
And then I had to have a boot on it and couldn't do anything with the boot. So then I was like, okay, they're telling me that I can't do anything again for 6 months, that I'm not going to be able to walk for 6 months. And I was like, well, no, like I'm not going to not walk for 6 months. So what am I going to do to give myself the best chance I can? And I'd already had the experience of like the hand thing and not spending the money and so on. And I was like, okay, I'm going to spend the money. So I got this game ready, like compression boot. And actually now having read a little bit about or listened to the Huberman stuff, actually, I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but it seemed to work. But I was like on the compression boot 3 times a day, started moving it really quite soon, but just moving it
Mm.
because I wasn't allowed to put any load on it, but you should move it. You shouldn't like stop moving completely because the reason everything atrophies is because the nerves aren't activated and aren't sending signal to the muscle. So
Yeah.
when the thing doesn't move, that's when everything starts to really get smaller and weaker. Did that, got all the vitamins that I could get my hands on, start eating really well, sleeping 8 hours, and just really concentrating on making sure I'm hitting all those things. So when you're saying like people don't go to physio, like I was doing my own physio 3 times a day. And then I'd also go to physio and pay for physio. So I paid, I don't know how much for this game ready, like
Mm.
compression and icing thing. And then I was paying like 75 euros a throw, I think twice a week or something for this physio, like an actual like one-on-one physio. And I think the first time I went back to the hospital, the doctor said, well, you've done like 6 months of recovery in 2 months or something like that.
Hmm.
And this is when like the next thing I did after that, like the first thing I did of training was that Murph with you. It was the first time I'd done a
I remember
Murph.
doing the math. Yeah.
Took my leg out of the thing and I was like, okay, let's go. Wobbled around and hobbled over it. But yeah, and basically there I did the same approach as you with your knee. So what can I do? Nothing with this leg really, but I
Yeah.
did a lot of other side, a lot of single leg squats with the other leg. But apparently, this is not the best thing to do from the things I was listening to. You should try and keep that one isolated, the strong one, and move the weak one. But I didn't
Mm.
know any of this at the
Mm.
time. So I was just like, well, if I train with this one, because I'd heard some things that said if you train with the bad leg, there's like a sort of radiation of strength to the good leg, to the bad leg, sorry, if you train the good leg. But I also got really good at dips and weighted dips
Yeah.
and pull-ups and weighted pull-ups and so on, and was just doing that. Was just going for it on there because you can really build a big strength base So you lose one thing, but then you build a big strength base for the rest of it. All of that training and work and so on helps clear all the damage out. And then you start again when you get the thing off your leg and just keep going. Because like you say, if you don't do it, then what have you got?
Yeah. Dude, we're gonna have to start wrapping this one up because you've got like the biggest
You
list of
managed to.
injuries ever.
Yeah, well, this is only three.
Exactly.
Right.
So what's the key if someone was to come along to you and go, I'm injured, what should I do? Like what would be the 30-second smash 'em with the top tips?
If you need some help, go and get it. Yeah, like if you're actually injured, go and get it. Don't be afraid to pay for some help if you can afford it, because I think this can really help. Do what you can do, start where you are, and then pay attention to all of these recovery things. Because like the most critical, I think, is getting enough sleep, getting the right food in, getting hydrated, staying calm, and just work through it and be patient. I
Yeah.
think this is all you can do, isn't it? Just start where you are and do what you can do.
hmm hmm
And you have to check the ego a little bit, don't you? And just say, well, this is all I can do right now, but this is going to get me somewhere in the end. Where that is, I don't know, but I'm going to have to go on the journey and get there.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd say do something. Just turn up, do something, because keeping that level of doing is really important. If you just completely fall off the boil, it's so much harder. I always say it's so much harder to go to the gym than it is to be at the gym. And I think you just if you give yourself too much wiggle room and too many pity parties, and you stop turning up, then it's so much harder to come back. So yeah, so just keep and just try. That'd be my one word. Just try and see what happens.
And if you need it, don't be afraid to set yourself a goal, I think, because I think
Mm.
that's critical for me. Like I need to be doing it for something. And whether that was that the little trail race or the half or the ultra or ride a bike again or whatever it is, then yeah, maybe for some people that's important. Maybe for some people, no, just want to be healthy. But for me, that's a driver to get going.
Nice. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it up and say thanks for tuning in again. Please drop a comment below if you're dealing with an injury and you've got any top tips and being quite successful with it, or if you're just a bit stuck, don't feel like you can't just reach out and go, oh, I could do with a bit of help. Because I like to think that we're doing this not just for our own benefit, but maybe it might help one person, two people. That would be pretty sweet. We can get some people in a good place and feeling good and motivated to get back or to progress a bit. I'd like that. What else have I got to say to these people? If you liked it, like it. There's a little button there that says like, just like that. If you're listening to this or would prefer to listen to it, you can get our podcast anywhere you get podcasts. It's all over the place. Just search Garage Built Athlete. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you want us to talk about. That'd be pretty cool. I like hearing what the people want to know. And we've got 4 episodes after this.
Leon's going to be happy because he can maintain his bike. His bike's in pieces now.
Yes. Hopefully that was long
Needs some
enough.
content.
Hopefully
Yeah,
that
he
was
can do
long
two
enough.
lots.
Two bikes. 2 bikes. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Mine seems pretty dull in comparison, but I think that the actual
Process is the same, isn't it?
process is the same regardless of even if Kieran, if you're listening or watching this, Kieran stacked a box jump today. It was pretty rough, and he taped it up and he just carried on. So there's that approach as well. Just put some tape on it and go and go again. But
You know, is he hurt or is he injured?
yeah, I mean, it
Hurt and
looked,
injured, maybe.
yeah,
Sorry, Kieran.
it looked like both. But he's a good
Hope
guy.
your shins
So
heal up.
yeah, cool. All right, bro. Let's wrap it up. What you got to say to finish this one off?
Humunculus. That's my win of the week. Humunculus. Amazing.
Nice end.
Thanks for listening.
Cool.
Catch you
All right.
later.
See ya.